When I walked into my first investment banking interview at Bank of America, my interviewer handed me a sheet of paper which said, investment banking is a business where thieves and pimps run freely on the corridors and the few good men die the death of a dog. And in big, bold letters at the bottom, it said, there is also a negative side. My interviewer, who was wearing a cowboy hat, looked straight into my eyes and asked me my first interview question: which one of the three are you? This was my first formal introduction to the world of Wall Street. I wanted to be on Wall Street since I was 13 years old, ever since I first saw the movie Wall Street. And I also wanted to own a yellow convertible and a blue motorboat. I was very specific about the colors as well. So at the age of 25, I graduated in the top 3% of my MBA class in both finance and accounting, and had secured that prestigious investment banking offer. Life was exhilarating. My family was extremely proud of me, especially my mother. And the day my results came out, I had to go to the Cornell University Medical Center for a regular blood test. 20 minutes into the procedure, I blacked out. And when I regained consciousness, I found myself on a stretcher, being madly rushed to the emergency room. My fingers and toes were outstretched and twisted in a very weird fashion. My hands and feet were completely paralyzed. And I felt this most excruciating pain that I'd ever felt in my life. I couldn't move my hands and feet, and my body started to get numb from my feet upwards. I couldn't feel my feet, couldn't feel my belly. I tried to speak, but no words would come out. And my eyelids gradually started to get heavy. And at that time, I intuited, this is probably my end. The only thought that went through my mind at that time was, who would console my mother? Fortunately, I survived, but I was in that paralyzed state for nearly 2 hours. And the doctors later informed me that I had been through what they called a severe vasovagal reaction, had gone brain dead for a few seconds, and had a miraculous escape. I had just received a second life. Now, that experience made me understand my vulnerability like never before. For the first time in my life, I recognized the true fragility of my own existence. And my one-track banker mind suddenly developed this urge to leave everything behind and discover the purpose of my own existence. I wanted to become a monk, to discover who I truly was and give my life to serving society. Now, I wish I could tell you I just left everything behind and became a monk. But I was just not brave enough. I mean, how could I? I worked 12 years to get to where I was, and in each one of the 44 interviews that I gave to get that one banking offer, I told every single interviewer that I wanted to be on the front pages of the Wall Street Journal. I had prestige, fame, position, and giving all of that up felt like suicide. And no health insurance, especially after all that I had been through. And the third reason, I think this was the most important one, I knew I would break my mother's heart if I became a monk. In fact, I had recurring dreams that my mother had died of a heart attack. And, it wasn't funny. It was very, very visceral. But at the same time, that near-death experience left this unescapable impression in my mind. And I really wanted to do something with my second life. So the only choice that I had, which is what I did, I decided to work on Wall Street and live in a monastery on the Lower East Side of the Manhattan as a monk. And I did that at the same time for more than 2 years. Now, of course, the rigors of Wall Street and the demands of the monastery were not really compatible with each other. And I discovered that. I worked a 95-hour work week. I didn't work 5 weekends in my 2 years in banking. And in the monastery, 2 hours of compulsory meditation every day, no alcohol, meat, fish, eggs, no tea, no coffee. And the biggest of all for a banker, no strip clubs. My Wall Street colleagues felt that I was hardworking, intelligent, but not quite the banker type. And the monks in the monastery, well, they thought that I was too attached to the material. In fact, when I came back one night, actually it was very early in the morning, 4:30 a.m., one of the monks just offhandedly looked at me and said, "Oh, it's nice to see you wake up early." And as if to add salt to the injury, I was the only associate in my class to be staffed on a very high-profile project for Playboy. And as I was browsing websites, looking at potential M&A targets for them, one of my colleagues passed by the cubicle and said, "Why do you get to work on all the good projects?" But deep inside, I was just very conflicted. And many times, I just wanted to make a decision so that I found myself on either one of the two sides, because living that tension every single day was absolutely agonizing. But each time I came close to making that decision, I realized that the only reason why I wanted to make the decision was because I wanted to escape that tension of being a hybrid. And so I continued to live that tension between that ambition and a calling. And then that tension itself became a living crucible that started to distill and clarify my deepest inner self. I realized over time that the only thing that I was looking for my entire life was my own true value. But I had misplaced it on something that was so superficial and external, on an investment banking job. And my work then started to become a platform not for prestige, power, fame, but it became a platform where I could make a difference to people's lives, whether I received the external validation or not. After 2 years in banking, I decided to synthesize my experience in the monastery and my experience in the corporate world to work with companies to create cultures of trust. And I realized that sometimes in order to synthesize on a deeper level, you have to live the thesis and the antithesis at the same time. The price that you pay for being a hybrid is that you don't really get the validation from either one of the two sides when you're living it. But when you do live that authentically, it synthesizes you on a much deeper level, and you can make a much bigger impact in the world. The day I submitted my resignation, my managing director came to my cubicle and said, "You're making the biggest mistake of your life. I will make you a star. Just stay." And I smiled, because that's exactly how the movie Wall Street ends. Thank you very much.